All right, we are live. I'm not sure what episode we're doing because we're skipping so Mom can join us for 2 of the cases. But I think this one is going to be probably one that will be listened to quite a bit. It's the Lindsay Buziak case. It's a black hole, just so everybody knows. But we're going to do introductions and let you guys know that this is me and my sister. Our mom had some obligations today. Plus, she sounds like a 13-year-old boy going through puberty. So I'm not sure it'd be very pleasant to hear her voice. So I'm hoping in a couple weeks when we finish our batch recording, maybe she'll be back to normal. So hit us off, and then do I need to pause and wait for you to say other things? Because the last time I did and you were done. So give me the thumbs up, right? So I know when it's good for me to go.
May I speak now?
Well, yeah, that's why I paused.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There is one bonus about Mom not being here is that I actually get to talk.
Yes.
And then, have things acknowledged.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Elena. Clearly, I am the younger sister, the youngest child.
Okay, yeah, thumbs up. That's how I know. Didn't know if you were done. My name is Sherry, and this is Outline of a Murder. And I'm super excited about this case, but I'm just going to give a disclaimer right off the bat. Spoiler alert, it is not solved. And most of our cases that we do are, because that's our purpose, is, getting the red flags, etc. But man, this one, the reason I decided to do it is I wouldn't mind doing more unsolved just to see, as we grow the podcast, just to see, what we can do and what information we can get out and what, of a stir we could get going. Crime Junkies, True Crime Garage. There's been cases that have been solved because of their work. And so I don't foresee anything that we talk about in this case that's going to add anything of value as far as solving it. But it's a very interesting case, and it also has our criteria of the red flags big time. And I'll get into those in a second. So it's not the typical romantic relationship red flags. It's just general personal safety, especially in your occupation if you are a realtor. And and I work with a realtor, and I think at one point we might have discussed just real estate alone safety tips. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but we're going to at the end, because working with a realtor, actually several, and then this case, we're going to have lots of good stuff. But I think a lot of it can also apply in other occupations. Okay. This is the best example of trusting your gut, and when in doubt, don't. And I need to give honor to whom honor is due. That when in doubt, don't is actually my sister's saying, and it's applied to training. Oh yeah, you told me that years ago, and I just latched onto it. So if I felt like, tired or sick, and I was doubting whether I should go to the gym, you said, well, when in doubt, don't. And I'm like, all right, So I have adopted that phrase, and it applies to this case. Also, when we're going through the ordinariness of life, and I don't even think that's a word, but I just made it up. The ordinariness of life, we can tend to dismiss red flags, or we can tend to dismiss gut feelings, because the ordinary can almost put a filter or overshadow things that are just not right. And you know what I mean? This is just ordinary. It's just an ordinary, meetup. You know what I mean? And that was something that caused her issues.
I also think that most people are generally optimistic, give people the benefit of the doubt, and can't believe that they know it's out there, but they can't believe people that you interact with.
Exactly.
Have any evil or ill will towards others.
Yeah, and that fascinates me because I don't think that way. I usually, the way I am is unless you prove me wrong, and just knowing human nature alone, people are in it for themselves and not in a bad way. Like we have that hedonistic system in our body for a reason. We are motivated by what we can get out of it. We've talked about David, king, before he was king, whenever Goliath was, tormenting the Israelites, one of his first questions is, well, what's in it for the man that takes them out?
Right. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, number one, people typically, their self-interest is at the foremost because it's a survival mechanism. And then the second thing you have to be careful with is people see the world as they see it, not as the other person. And like you said, it is so hard to think that people are that evil out there and that you will ever encounter them.
Yeah. Huh.
And I think it's, like you hear the phrase, like when we had the library shooting here, you see murders, it's like, I didn't think that ever happened here. And it happens everywhere. And most of the murder cases we've actually investigated and we've covered are in small towns. Surprisingly.
I'll give props out to most Texas towns. It's really, you just really don't mess with Texans for the most part. Right. Most of us are packing.
Yes.
Usually a lot.
Right.
At all.
Right. Of course, we've done some cases in Texas that were doozies, but.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now, let me get into the victim here. All right. So her name is Lindsay Elizabeth Buziak. She was born November 2nd, 1983 to Jeff and Evelyn Buziak in Canada. She had one sister, Sarah. At the time of her murder, which was February 2nd, 2008, she was well on her way becoming a great real estate agent in Victoria, Canada. Okay, so here she is, 28. She's doing good, but she's a newbie, and that's important because, when you're new, like a lot of people don't realize, they think, oh, I'll get into real estate. There's good money there. But I know from watching realtors, again, being in that industry, as far as social media, it's a business. You can't approach it as a hobby. Like you have to work that business. You have to call your contacts. You have to, do the things that are necessary. And so when you look at a lot of realtors, especially new realtors, they don't make it past a couple years, sometimes at the most 5 years, because they treat it like a hobby. I remember one time when we were curious about a house that was down the street from our old house. The lady that was showing the property that I think was the listing agent practically showed up in pajamas, no makeup, her hair messy up in a ponytail. And it's like, well, I wouldn't want to do any business with you because you can't even get dressed to show the house. How do I know you're going to take care of the business? And so her being successful already, she had the personality, she had the drive, and also she had a great future, but she hadn't had any big deals yet.
It's hard work. I've listened to a family member just talk about the process, and it's very hard work, time consuming. And then when you are learning your craft, typically, for those that do have drive, they are all in. It's like tunnel vision just for, again, to perfect your craft and be successful.
100%. And on top of that, you have to work evenings and weekends, because most people cannot look at houses during the day. So in the day, you're doing the paperwork, you're getting the properties listed, you're doing all that, and then you're showing properties, typically in the evenings and on the weekends. So I have a lot of respect for real estate agents that are successful because I know the work they put into it. And, I can respect new real estate agents as well, but people just need to know that it is a full-time job. She was taking it like that. Also, all of her colleagues, her friends said she was very popular. She was very caring. And that's important too, because obviously she had the people skills, but people would feel that she cared for them that, that she didn't have commission breath, which is very typical sometimes when you're dealing with real estate agents. They're just looking at that commission, not hearing what you want.
Right. Commission breath. I like that.
That's not an original. I heard that the other day. So I was like, ooh, I'm going to take that too. I'm just a collector of phrases. Okay. So let me bring up the pictures. I meant to have those open, and I've been up since 5 something. So I apologize if I sound loopy at all at any point in this podcast. Okay. So let me pull up a picture of her and share my
I would
screen.
just like to interject that you're slacking. I was up at 5 my time.
Well, I'm sorry. I was like, 20 minutes late?
No, an hour.
Well,
Hour.
don't be ridiculous. It's like time things. Time, I can't help it. It's 5
I was up
there.
an hour. And you're just snoozing away.
Oh, wow. I have to, turn things on with this new computer and okay. Is it not going to let me? It's not going to let me share my screen. Oh, that's nice. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Oh,
Okay, what's...
beauty.
Oh, so you can see her?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's her. And then this is her as well. I'm not sure who these people are. I think it might have been her boyfriend and his sister. And then, yeah, I think so. Yeah. And so that's his boyfriend, Jason. Her boyfriend, Jason, he plays a big part in this. And, but like she's just so cute and has that winning smile, well put together. And so anyway, she was definitely, a go-getter. Now, at the time, she was dating a guy. His name is Jason Zalo, and he came from money, and he was also part of a prominent real estate family himself, and their relationship seemed to be going really, really well, and it was serious. And most of the first-hand knowledge I get from for the next 2 episodes are actually from Jason's mouth and his mom's mouth in a podcast called Murder on the Island. So I highly recommend it. It was one of the few I could find where they could actually interview first person, because there's a lot of fake stuff out there and a lot of lies, which I'll get into why as we go through this episode. He met Lindsay at a real estate workshop. And he liked her because she knew what she wanted. I mean, she had goals. She was going to go after them. And he said that they clicked. And then they both started dating each other after they both got their real estate license. So he's new, but he comes from a real estate family. She's new. So, they had a lot in common right off the bat. Everything just clicked in place. Now, like any murder, they always go from the immediate circle of the victim and out. So they're immediately going to be looking at Jason. But the crime is so weird that it just went out to people that had nothing to do with it. And it's really unfortunate, which we'll get into. In late January, so the murder was February 2nd, in late January of 2008, Lindsay received a phone call from a woman who explained that she and her husband were urgently looking for a home to buy in the $1 million range. She had a foreign accent that Lindsay said was Spanish or Mexican. Lindsay was immediately curious why the woman called her, because she was a new agent. It didn't make any sense. She'd never sold
$1
him.
million.
Exactly. Now, that should have been the first red flag.
Yeah.
But it didn't, some say that she was worried. The majority say she wasn't. The problem with statements post-event is that people feed their own perspective into them.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go with what Jason says, just because he was closest. But even some of the things, like when he was being interviewed, he did not remember something that he had said. So trauma, all of that stuff plays a factor.
And it would be enticing. It's like, that may be a red flag, but it also be enticing. That's $1 million sell.
And if your commission is, most real estate agents at 6%, some are 5%. If you have to split it, then obviously, it's halved. But I mean, that's a very large commission. But like you said, it's enticing on purpose.
Uh-huh.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so it should have been a red flag. And that's what I want people to hear. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And that's where more vetting, okay, I would like your name, your number, your birth date, and if they're fake, then they're not going to give it to you.
Right.
Most people put that information on Facebook anyway. So if they're like, well, I don't want to give you my birthday. Well, do you have Facebook? Well, yeah, well, it's on there, but maybe a little bit more vetting to make sure they're legitimate.
I hadn't been on Facebook for years. Your birth date's on there?
Oh, yeah, you could put your birth date and everything on there.
People don't do that.
I know. Now, Lindsay's wondering, well, how did she even get my number? So this is 2008. Back then, you would call the office, not the personal cell phone. If, like, they call the office, a lot of times the office receptionist will give the cell phone out because, that's how realtors work. I'm not sure how Lindsay did it. I don't know if her cell phone was accessible or if people had to call the office, but the fact that she wanted to know how the lady got her cell number tells me that more than likely it wasn't public knowledge. So she said that a previous client had given them her number. Okay, the next question is, which one?
Yeah.
Which previous client? And so from what I can tell, and man, I went over the materials twice because I wanted to make sure I got as accurate as I could on this case because of all the nonsense around it. Despite those red flags, Lindsay did not seem nervous for her safety. And that's concerning to me.
So, did you happen to look at the area where she grew up?
No, I'm assuming that area or at least Canada. Well, now we actually will probably get to that because she did travel back where she used to live to visit friends previously. And that might be where she was, raised and all that. So when we get to that, we'll see.
Okay.
She did wonder, though, to Jason if this was too good to be true. And according to Jason and the office receptionist, they both searched for the number that called her and they couldn't find anything.
That's interesting that they searched. Dang it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The receptionist said that Lindsay was freaked out, but again, I don't believe so. I think she might have added that, or she interpreted her request to find out how this lady found out her, what her number was. Maybe she interpreted that as being freaked out. There were also several communications with this lady by phone and email. Jason answered the phone at least once and basically said, Lindsay is not here because, she was gone at the time. So the lady told her later when she was finally able to get a hold of her that she would be flying in the day of and that she would be the one to see the house. So at this point, Lindsay has found several houses, but the first one she wants to show her is actually Jason's mom's listing. And it was in a new development, and it was in Saanich, a suburb of Victoria. And so at this point, Lindsay's like, okay, I've got several houses. We're going to start at this one. It was hard to find because it's a new development, which is interesting how they were able to get there easily. Also, she was only supposed to see the lady. So the lady said that she and her husband were looking for a property. And then, Lindsay probably feels better that it's only going to be the wife flying in. I hope people see the level of planning.
Right.
Because, what is Lindsay going to do if both show up? She's not going to refuse to show the property. That's what people do. They put you in a spot where you don't know how to respond. If you look at a lot of like serial killers or just killers in general, but typically serial killers, but even people that are rapists or it's their first kill, they will say stuff like, I'm just going to rob you. I'm not going to hurt you. If you cooperate, blah, blah. Those statements are to put you at ease. And then when, it's time to them to kill you, there's no response. Like, what are you going to do? And so it's the same thing. It's like she's being positioned to be in a situation where what is she going to do? Say, I'm sorry, you said it was just going to be you. I'm not going to show you the house.
However, it could easily be explained as well.
Oh, absolutely. But she was murdered. And so they definitely planned this out. And it's sad because here, I mean, in the past, I probably would have been hesitant to not show it. But now, especially since we have a true crime podcast, I would be like, I'm not showing you this house until until someone else comes and shows it with me, because I'm not comfortable showing $1 million house without assistance.
Exactly.
You know? And then if they try to take you on the street, you can start screaming.
And since it's Canada, I doubt that I doubt that there's good carry laws either.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're out of luck there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No offense to Canadians, just the laws are very interesting. Sherry?
Now, police later discovered, so this is January, that the phone the lady used was a burner phone that had been bought the previous November, and it was not activated until January when they contacted Lindsay.
When did she get her license again?
I'm not sure. I think she'd been in it for at least a few months, maybe a year or so. Now, this is interesting. So again, we have prolonged planning. They buy the phone 2 months in advance, and they only used it to contact Lindsay. It sounds like a target, like a hit.
Absolutely. Right. That's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, okay, who
wanted her dead?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It gets crazier. It gets crazier. Because again, it's unsolved. It's just the biggest puzzle that of any of the cases we've investigated. All right, so Lindsay shows up. Well, no, let me backtrack a little bit. As stated, the listing was Jason's mom's listing. Jason and Lindsay agreed to meet at the property that Saturday.
Oh.
Yeah, she wanted him close by. So she may not have been freaked out, but she definitely, again, I think she was having some gut feelings like this doesn't sound right. And I wish she would have just refused to show the property. They had a late lunch at a restaurant. Receipts showed that they paid the bill at $4.24, and she needed to show the house at 5. They both had taken their own vehicles to the restaurant, and the plan was for Lindsay to go and change clothes really quick and then go to the house.
I'm sorry, let's back up. A late lunch at 4:24.
Mm-hmm.
I see. I would die. Go ahead, continue.
Me too. Be like, lunch? That's a snack. Like I've already had breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, snack, and then dinner. Now, Shirley, which is Jason's mom, and Jason had both offered to show the home to Lindsay because she had a bachelorette party that she needed to attend, and there was this time crunch, and each time she refused. So that's where it's kind of like, okay, so she was a little off put because of it sounds too good to be true, blah, blah, but not enough to recognize she was in danger because she refused twice to have them show the house for her. She did, though, again, request Jason to meet her there. And Jason at the time was 6'3" and weighed 240 pounds, which from the picture you can see he's pure muscle. He was also an ex-hockey player. Jason said that the decision for him to be at the property was actually spontaneous. They didn't plan it out. So I don't know if they were discussing it over lunch. And she's like, you know what? Can you just show up at the property? The closer she got, maybe she's getting nervous, showing $1 million house, and maybe would feel comfortable with, Jason there to help. Or maybe there was some safety concern because she's a new agent. Too good to be true. We don't know.
Because he was new as well. So I bet that he was her safety person.
I agree with that, but he also came from a real estate family, and he would have had quite a bit of knowledge. It wouldn't have surprised me if he helped his mom out with things as he grew up, or as an adult. But yes, I agree. I think the priority was probably safety. And after they left the restaurant, Jason, he had to go to an auto shop and have a conversation with one of his clients on a property that both he and Lindsay were working on. So he was representing, I think, the shop owner, and then Lindsay was representing the other party in the deal. The CCTV shows that they both, him and another individual, his friend, both left the shop at 5:30. So at this point, Lindsay has been at the house for 30 minutes. Jason and Lindsay exchanged several text messages during the time, so she knew he was running late. Jason then had to ask her for directions because he could not find the property because his GPS didn't have it in there since it was a new development. The last conversation ended abruptly when her clients showed up. So it sounds like they're on they're texting, and she's like, oh, they're here. Talk to you soon. He wishes, he said in that interview, that he would have asked more questions, and he showed up 5 minutes, or that he would have shown up 5 minutes early, to see what was going on and all that.
Dang, that's quick.
Yeah. The property was located in a small cul-de-sac with 4 other houses. The location's important to our case, and I'm going to give the street names. The house number was 1702, and it was located on the outer edge of the cul-de-sac at the intersection of D'Souza Place and a main street called Torquay Drive. The reason I feel this is important is because they scouted the place out. She had researched several properties for them, and usually with a real estate agent, you'll send several properties to them. Then the clients will decide which one they want to see first. The location of the house. So let's say you have a cul-de-sac. You got the houses that are actually on the circle. They're more secluded, but they're also farther from the street.
Right.
The one she shows is by 2 streets, one being a main street in that area, implying a quick getaway.
Right. Let me ask you this. You said that it was a new development. Was it still in the process of being developed? So a lot of houses still being built?
I don't know. If there was work still going on, it was a Saturday, so no one's going to be there. But what are you thinking?
What I mean is they wouldn't be the homes would still be in development, so there wouldn't be a lot of people living around there yet.
Good point. There were neighbors, and I do believe the houses were complete.
Okay.
Good question. Now, the side of the property and the back garden ran parallel to Torquay Drive, which was the main street. Lindsay was under the impression, like we've stated, that she was only going to show the female the property. You can imagine her surprise and probably some real apprehension at this point when the lady shows up with her, air quotes, husband. Okay, why is confetti, air quotes? Oh my gosh. Okay, so let me tell you what's happening.
What else can we do to get confetti and balloons? Oh, happy birthday.
Okay,
I don't think it's going to come out of the ceiling, Sherry. I don't know what you're
people
doing.
can't see what's happening, but our last recording, when we were finishing, balloons just went up our Zoom screen. And just now I figured out air quotes causes confetti. So I will be posting this video so people can see the confetti. Oh, there it is. Wow.
This is just so exciting.
Now my sister's doing air quotes. Okay. Back to we're discussing murder here. And we got confetti coming down from our Zoom. I don't know what's happening. Air quotes. Okay, we need to stop. Okay. I have no idea what's happening. I've never had that happen. There were 2 witnesses. They saw both the female and the male. They described a 6-foot-tall Caucasian man with dark hair and a blonde-haired woman between 35 and 45 wearing a distinctly patterned dress of red and black swirls. It appeared to be a designer dress. Later, police discovered that it wasn't a designer brand, so they weren't able to trace it. The witnesses saw Lindsay shake hands with the couple before entering the house. The lockbox on the door was accessed at 5:29. So it actually sounds like they were supposed to see the house at 5:30, not 5. Let me show you a picture of the dress.
Ew.
Yeah, it's ugly. This is a sketch of the lady that police believe Lindsay met before the murder took place. So she's wearing this. Far off, I guess, it appeared like it was, a designer dress. But, again, they found out it wasn't.
So she walked in at 5:29.
Yes. This is the property.
Oh, that's cute.
And see, there's a sketch. Okay. And we'll get into the other pictures in a bit, and nothing that's graphic.
Okay.
Jason and some called him friend, some called him colleague. They arrived at 5:40. His initial statement to the police is that when he pulled up, he saw a man see him and go back into the house. I don't know if the next part is true, but some reports say that he parked outside for about 10 minutes and then he decided to move his vehicle to Torquay Drive. He didn't want Lindsay to appear unprofessional, with the boyfriend showing up.
Yeah.
He didn't confirm that, and he wasn't asked that in the interview. And I'm very reluctant to go by the reports only, which will make sense as we continue through this case. Now, so people know, most viewings will take about 15, 30 minutes of stretching it. If you have someone that has a lot of questions, plus it's a higher end property, it's bigger, they may want to really look at the details. Yes, it can go 30 minutes, even an hour, but typically showings are extremely fast. Anytime I have gone through a showing or I've been there when Tammy has taken people through showings, it's quick. At this point, there's no reason of concern for Jason. He gets there 10 minutes late and he's not too concerned, but the man seeing him and going back in, it did cause a little bit of concern. In his interview with Murder on the Island, Jason said that he was alarmed with that man running back into the house. So this is why I'm not sure if him moving his car is correct,
Right.
because what he said is that when he saw that, he immediately went to the door and it was locked.
Oh, well, that tells you right there.
You don't lock houses that you're showing either. There was no reason for it to be locked. You never lock the front door when you're showing a house. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, that tells me that he didn't stay in the car 10 minutes. He didn't drive to a different street. I mean, he
Yeah.
used them immediately. So.
Yeah. He saw Lindsay's shoes near the entrance hall, which is a common practice for high-end homes. So when you go in there, you take off your shoes or you put those like little booties on. That way you're not tracking, dirt and mud and things like that. But he didn't see any signs of movement and he didn't see Lindsay. He said that he rang the doorbell 10 times. Lindsay had taken a portion of the lockbox. Now, I'm not familiar with this because the lockboxes that we deal with here, there's not a portion. Now, some of the newer ones might have that, or maybe some of the older ones, but usually the ones we have here, they open up and the keys are in there and then you shut them. I have seen like on TV where a portion does come off, but he said that Lindsay had taken a portion of the lockbox inside, so he couldn't get in that way. So he had no access to the key. He called
Do you think she actually did that?
I do. Yeah, it's common practice. Even real estate agents here, even though you can't take part of the lockbox in, they will just keep the keys with them, which is not a good idea. Put the key back in the lockbox. I know it's inconvenient to go back and get the key out to lock up the property, but if someone needs to get to you, you will want to have that key there. And so he couldn't get in. He called his mom. Remember, it was her listing, and she got the garage code for him. So he tried to put that in. It was the wrong one. At this point, he's freaking out. He calls 911. While he's on the phone with 911, his friend found a gap in the fence along the back garden. So remember, the garden and all that runs along that street. He went through the gap. Once he was in the garden, he noticed the back patio door was wide open. He called out to Jason, let him know that the patio door was open. Jason then told the 911 operator they were going to go ahead and enter the house before he hung up. And normally they don't like you to hang up here. I don't know what their policy is in Canada, but typically they want to keep you on. So if their policy is to keep you on, that might have been a little bit suspicious to them later concerning Jason because he hung up. Jason's colleague entered the home, unlocked the front door for Jason. That tells me they didn't notice anything at first.
Was it a 2-story home? Mm-hmm. It was, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah. Jason said that his friend went straight ahead. So he's on the first floor. Jason started up the stairs and he could see from the stairs Lindsay slumped. He ran up to her and she was in a pool of blood in the master bedroom. He did see multiple stab wounds. He yelled at his friend to call 911 again, and then he started CPR, but he could hear the air coming out of the stab wounds.
What?
He said there was a lot of blood, and police and paramedics arrived minutes later, and they pronounced her dead on arrival. Here's what's also weird. There were not any defensive wounds.
And she was stabbed in the front?
Well, I'm thinking that it was maybe both. And the police think that, okay, so when a real estate agent shows properties, you've got a couple ways they can go about it. It just depends on the real estate agent. Some, they will get you in the front door. They'll tell you a little bit of the features. They'll encourage you to look around, and then you meet them back at a meeting point, usually the kitchen because there's a counter, blah, blah. Other real estate agents will take you room to room. In high end, typically they give you a tour because there's so much to look at. And then they'll be like, take your time, look again. I'll be down in the kitchen or whatever, I'm assuming she was leading them through the house and they probably stabbed her in the back first is what I'm thinking because there were no defensive wounds.
Right.
Nothing was stolen, and she was not sexually assaulted.
Oh, yeah, 100% a hit.
Okay, that because before we get in the investigation, I just wanted to see what you're thinking so far, like your thoughts. To me, it seems like a hit. What is weird though is by knife.
And well, I
Well, it
mean,
is Canada.
right. Um, maybe wanted her to suffer, and then yeah, we can chalk it up to Canada. Why not?
Because if you can't carry there, then, I mean, it's probably harder to get a weapon.
And actually, you can't trace a knife. You could trace a gun a little bit better.
And it's loud. It's going to, bring attention unless you have a silencer. I I guess that actually would probably be the only weapon that would make sense because if you do like, some type of bludgeoning instrument, you're going to have blood all over you. A knife wound though is risky because typically you stab or hurt yourself. Strangulation, but that is a slow death.
Right.
Yeah, I guess there in Canada where you can't carry, your best bet's a knife.
I mean, I don't know for sure if you can't carry, but
I don't think you can.
yeah, I mean, with the other laws I'm familiar with,
You might have the ability to have a weapon in your home. I just don't know if you can take it with you. Are you checking it out?
I am doing a fact checker, sister.
Very good. Very good.
So yeah, don't get on to me for being on the phone.
Hey, last time it was excessive. I'm like, what are you doing? Are you chatting with friends?
Was not.
Chatting? Air quotes, confetti.
Oh my gosh.
Do you need your spectacles? I mean, you are getting older.
I know. Well, this happened to me last year too. And he's like, no, you're still good. I'm like, are you sure?
Oh, reading, I have to have the progressives for sure. My eyes aren't getting worse, but I have to have those.
What's interesting is visitors. It gives a lot of information about visitors, what they can bring. um, one more second.
Okay. While you're looking that up, just so our audience knows, Jason and his colleague were handcuffed immediately and taken into custody.
Why?
Yeah, for questioning.
Sorry.
And I'm sure there was some suspicion as far as their statements, why'd you hang up on 911, blah, blah. I don't know again if that's, Canada policy, but they were able to verify everything they said with receipts, witnesses, and surveillance. So they were released without charge because there's no way that they could have murdered Lindsay.
Currently you can so currently Canada is more strict than the United States, and you can carry with the appropriate license, but I'm not sure what it was in 2008.
Okay. Well, and again, love, Canadian people, but, here in America, we had to, we had laws where you had to carry a weapon in the founding of our country. And, like in Britain, they don't carry, even some of the cops. So Canada is more British, I would say, in their policies than we are.
Yeah. It looks like they may have been able to. So,
Okay. And then the other question is, how easy is it to get all of that too? Like even here, you have states that you can carry, but they make it so difficult for you to get what you need to carry that it's not even worth going through the process. That might be part of it too.
And honestly, I mean, you and I both know a lot of people that will not carry. So maybe we just think that it should be more common than what it is.
I was just thinking as far as the criminals themselves, criminals will always get weapons. It doesn't matter,
Well, I'm still thinking, wanting Lindsay to have been carrying.
Me too. Me too.
All right.
Jason did say in that interview that he was extremely frustrated with the police because they could have shut down the island. Where she was showing the property was on an island. And he's like, shut the island down. I didn't do this. And they didn't. They didn't go on a search for the actual killers. Instead, they focused on him immediately. I understand being suspicious of the two that find the body. Put them in the back seat and shut the island down and then take them in for questioning people. That was very frustrating to me as well. I get why the cops do that, but that doesn't negate your responsibility to shut off all exits, especially on an island, which is risky. The fact that they agreed to see a property on an island is risky to the killers. And it's surprising that they did that.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And then over the years, so now we're, years later, here it is, 2023. This was in 2008. Jason has been interviewed multiple times. He's been polygraphed. He's passed the polygraph. And I don't put much stock into him, but, investigators can use it as a tool. He handed over his cell phone, his laptop, and anything else they wanted, and the cops did clear him, but public sentiment has not, and it's gotten even worse, and that will be for part 2. But I'm here to say, people that are listening to this podcast, Jason did not kill Lindsay, and that just needs to be out of people's minds because they have verified there's no way he could have physically done it. They have surveillance, closed circuit television. They've got the receipts. They've got his GPS. They've got his phone data. They know that he did not kill Lindsay. Detectives believe that the killers were leaving the property when Jason drove up. They locked the door and then they left through the back patio and they went through the gap in the fence to a vehicle that was probably parked on or near Torquay. It wouldn't have been noticed parked there because it's a very busy thoroughfare. This supports the witnesses that saw the couple walking up to the house, not parking a car and getting out. That should have been a red flag.
Yeah, for sure. Where's your vehicle? Where'd you come from?
The only thing I could say, though, is if, again, the house is at the end of the cul-de-sac next to the busy street, I could see Lindsay thinking, well, they probably didn't know they could park in the driveway and they might have just parked on this side and then walked. I could see how it'd be dismissed. I would have been like, hey, guys, why don't you bring your car around, park in the driveway. But, it's just, again, you're in the ordinariness of life. You don't realize you're about to die. So you're not going to think of those things.
Yeah.
Police were able to verify every vehicle that belonged there in the neighborhood. And then they also found out that the woman's name was fake. Like I said, the cell phone was purchased in November, not activated until January. So that tells cops it was bought for the sole purpose of committing this crime. And it was under a fake name, Paulo Rodriguez, in Vancouver, and it hasn't been used since. It was registered to a real address, but it's a business address that detectives know had no connection to the case. So basically, they just take an address of a random business and assign it to that burner phone. Cell phone tower pings show that the phone traveled on a ferry from Vancouver the day before the murder. This tells me that they planned it out meticulously. We know they started planning it months before. Detectives believe that they weren't familiar with the area, and that's why they were there the day before to scout it out, get the location, and get their escape route.
Dang.
Police.
So Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. And again, the island thing's awfully risky. So you got Vancouver, they come over on a ferry. To get back to the main, land, they're going to have to take a ferry back. And that's why Jason was so upset that they didn't lock down the island because they would have been stuck on there.
The only other thought, or the only thought I have about that is that they likely scheduled the time 5:30. It was an extremely quick murder. So I'm curious as to when the next ferry was leaving.
I am too. And I would like to know what the people working the ferry, if they saw anything, if they saw the suspects, did they notice what the car was? Cops will keep some of the things close to the vest because they need to have that knowledge that no one else will know but the killers. I'm assuming they probably interviewed them.
Hopefully.
They also learned that a second cell phone was used for a couple of the calls. They have done a dump of cell phone records of all the cell towers along the route to see if a number kept popping up that could be tied to the couple and to the burner. They have found someone that might be connected and that would want her dead, and that might have been involved with the planning of the murder. 13 years after the murder, the FBI is involved, which I didn't know the FBI would get involved with cases in other countries like this, like murders. But what they're doing is they're helping them out with new technology, crime investigation techniques. They're retesting all the evidence at the crime scene, and they're also generating some new leads.
I love America.
So what this tells me is they kind of got an idea of who was behind this. They just have to have the evidence to prove it in a court of law. And by them saying they found someone that might be connected, that would want her dead, and another that might have been involved with the planning, we definitely have several people, or at least two.
Yep. Okay, I see you.
Now, let me get into the ridiculousness briefly, and then we'll go into part 2. So air quotes. This is too cool.
I gotta say it, air quotes.
It's the air quotes. Oh, well, no, it might be.
Quotes. Is it a combo?
It might be. So is it just the hands? Let me see. Okay, I didn't do it. What's happening?
Or maybe.
Oh, it's.
Or maybe.
So it's the peace sign. Okay. Oh. Wow. You know, guys, we have got to quit playing. We're discussing a case here. Okay. The next part of the story has been blown way out of proportion in my thinking. Remember, Jason's family was in real estate. In the cul-de-sac, a developer named Joe D'Souza was on location at some construction sites an hour before the murder. So that tells us there were some construction going on. The cul-de-sac development is called D'Souza Court, named after Joe. Joe is a friend and associate of Shirley Zalo, Jason's mother. This had just sparked a firestorm among all the followers of the case and on the internet, implying that Jason and his family, especially his mom, had something to do with this murder, whether they disliked her or whatever, and that they arranged to have her murdered. And I will say, when I first started investigating this case, I was like, oh yeah, 100% the family did it. But the more I dug, and again, going to the first person people that are involved in this case, detectives, reading what they have to say, listening to what they have to say, it soon becomes clear this family had nothing to do with her being murdered, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's false. The police have said over and over, they have told people the family has nothing to do with her murder, and people just won't believe them. And I can see why they're suspicious. I mean, it's weird. Why would you kill a brand new agent? It doesn't make any sense. But it also doesn't make any sense to have your boyfriend's girlfriend killed in a development where you're listing the house and you're friends with the developer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It almost makes you wonder if someone's after Shirley to frame her. I mean, it's almost like, is it a vendetta against the family? Is it a vendetta against D'Souza? I mean, that's probably just as crazy as what other people are saying. But I mean, we could go that direction and make more sense than what these people keep saying.
I would think it would just make sense if the vendetta was against Shirley, they would just kill her.
Exactly. Even Dateline gets into the nonsense. Dateline, in an episode called Dreamhouse Murder, it aired September 2010, discussed a possible drug bust connection. It was the largest drug bust in Alberta's history. So what does, Alberta have to do with it? Well, detectives Horsley and McCall said that in December 2007, Lindsay tried to contact the friend of her ex-boyfriend while she was in Calgary, which is part of Alberta. I think that's where she's originally from. Then on January 22nd, 2008, so December she contacts a friend, January 22nd, the drug bust occurred, and then she was killed February 2nd. Some have wondered if her death was ordered by a drug cartel that believes she was a police informant. The problem is that she was never an informant, and the murder was too personal versus a hired killer's MO, but I'm not sure of that anymore because, again, in our discussions about the ability to have a weapon in Canada, it sounds like it's much harder than it is here in America. I mean, you can go to any street corner and buy a gun, illegally, and you can go into any place and buy one legally. But let's say that she wasn't an informant. The drug cartel, because cartels will kill people that are informants, they don't know it. What if they don't know she's not an informant? They just assume she is, and that she's the one that got them busted, and so they're going to take a hit out on her. The reason I don't think that's the case, although I could be wrong, is number one, it was amateurish and it was brutal. If you go into the crime scene, it was not a professional. Also, there was so much planning. They could have taken her out anytime.
Yeah, it was a year of planning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe that theory.
Yeah, I don't see the drug cartel as well. They do. They also believe that it was planned by someone close to her that had access to inside information from the Remax office where she worked. I don't know what that is. Now, this is a police. They're saying this. If it's just her cell phone, I'm not sure that would be the only place where they'd, get her cell. But, so Dateline is saying this. They also implied that Shirley, her other son, and Jason were involved. So let me go back. Let me correct the statement. Dateline is the one that said it sounds like someone close to her had access to inside information from the Remax office, not the police. I want to verify or clarify that. They implied that Shirley, her other son, and Jason were involved. And Dateline and Lindsay's dad made their lives miserable in spite of them being cleared by the police.
Insider information. I mean, it sounds like they only had her cell phone.
Right. But did they know where she was going to be at the time, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't matter because she scheduled the appointment with the killers.
Right.
It wasn't like she showed up by herself. Now, here's the final thing for this part one. I couldn't verify this, but if it's true, it's incredibly sad. Some reports say that at 5:41, Lindsay pocket dialed a friend that she hadn't spoken to in a long time. The message was so muffled that the friend couldn't hear anything or know what was going on. She thought it was a butt dial. We've all gotten those, and so she hung up. If that's true, the police believe the call was during the attack. But I can't verify it because of what we're going to discuss in episode 2. So what do you think so far? Any thoughts? I mean, I think we both agree it was a hit.
That's all I have so far. I'm very interested to see who would have a vendetta around or, against her a year prior to an ex-boyfriend, perhaps. I mean, typically that's pretty common.
They did check into her ex-boyfriend. He had an alibi. I personally wondered if it was, and I know this sounds crazy, but I've heard of crazier, if it was another real estate agent.
Well,
I know it sounds far-fetched, but, Tanya, had people hit her knee.
But I'm thinking a year before that, was she in the process of getting her license? She wouldn't be a threat.
I don't know how long she was in real estate before this deal. I don't know if it was months, if it was like 2 to 3 years, because even in real estate, 2 to 3 years, you're still considered fairly new. But I would guess that she was, probably a year or under as well. I don't, now that you say it, I mean, she really wasn't competition for much of anybody. Not yet.
Right. Yeah. And of course, the ex-boyfriend's going to have an alibi. I mean, it sounds like a hit. So you're going to have an alibi.
Well, I think they were able to verify in my notes. We may get to that point, but I do think they were able to verify. So there's the sketch again of the lady. This is the room where she was located, where Jason saw her. And this is her being carried out of the house. And so if you look, this is the front door. And you can see the glass, right? And then I'm sure the main door has glass. The stairs are right in front. And the shoes, see where they're at?
Yeah.
So she would have put her shoes over here. When they arrive, the colleague just goes straight, I'm assuming, in there, because it says that he went straight. He didn't turn into this room. He could have glanced and seen that she wasn't there. So then Jason immediately goes up the stairs. And as he's coming up the stairs is where he sees her slumped over. So I'm assuming this is the doorway into the master bedroom. And so out in that area, or maybe it's on this side, is how he could see her.
I think that was quick.
It was very fast. Okay, so we'll conclude this part 1, and then we'll go ahead and get into part 2. But I am determined not to forget our tagline. Now, would you like some visuals, some prompts?
No.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me.
Be smart.
Now, do you want to do moms or me?
Be rude.
And don't be a victim. Very good. Very good. Outline of a Murder is a Mr. Joseph production. What do you think, Joseph?